I don't post things like this. I've never been the type to talk about what happened that weekend. But it's been 3 years, and I still can't sleep without checking the window. So here it is, the full story. What happened when my friend Marcus and I camped somewhere we had absolutely no business being. It was late August, that heavy, humid kind of August where even the evenings don't cool down. Marcus and I had been planning a camping trip for weeks. Nothing fancy, just a couple of nights off grid, away from work, away from our phones, away from everything. We'd been to the usual spots before, state parks, designated trails, but Marcus had found this place on an old hiking forum, a post from maybe 2014 with no replies, no photos, just a rough description and coordinates. A stretch of forest outside a small town in rural Pennsylvania. The poster called it the most isolated patch of woods I've ever walked through. He said he'd camped there twice, said it was perfect. That should have been enough for us to think twice, that it was a post from a decade ago with no follow-up, that no one had ever replied to it. But we were 27 years old and we thought we knew better than the silence. We drove out on a Friday afternoon. The town we passed through, I won't name it, was the kind of place with one gas station, one diner, and people who looked at your license plate before they looked at your face. We stopped for fuel. An older man at the pump next to us glanced at our camping gear loaded in the truck bed. "Where are you boys headed?" he asked, friendly enough. Marcus told him, showed him roughly on his phone map. The man looked at the screen for a moment. Something shifted in his expression, not alarm, more like resignation. Like he'd had this conversation before. And there's a trail marker about a mile past the county road. Once you see the yellow markers, you're in the state forest. Stay in the state forest. I remember asking why. He just said, because past the ridge, that land has a different kind of owner. We laughed about it in the truck. Marcus did an impression of him the whole drive down the county road. We were idiots. We found the trailhead easily enough. The state forest section was beautiful. Tall oaks, dense undergrowth, the smell of pine and damp earth. We hiked in about 2 miles before Marcus decided we should push further. If we go past the ridge, he said, we get away from any other campers. We'll have complete privacy. We crossed the ridge as the sun dropped lower. The light changed on the other side. I don't know how else to describe it other than to say the forest felt denser in a way that had nothing to do with the trees. The air was stiller. Sounds were muted. Even our footsteps sounded different. We found a clearing near a dry creek bed. Perfect campsite. Flat ground, natural windbreak, good sight lines. We set up the tent, started the fire, cooked our food. For the first hour, everything was normal. Then Marcus said very quietly, "Did you move my boot?" I hadn't touched his boot. It was sitting on the opposite side of the fire from where he'd left it. Neither of us said anything else about it. An hour later, the fire did something I'd never seen a campfire do. It went quiet. Not out, still burning, but the crackling stopped completely. Total silence from the flame. It lasted maybe 4 seconds, and then it came back. Marcus looked at me across the fire. I looked at him. "Wind," he said. There was no wind. We went to bed around 11. I'm a light sleeper, always have been. I woke at what I later estimated to be around 2 a.m. because of a sound I couldn't immediately identify. Not an animal, not wind. It was rhythmic, deliberate, like someone slowly walking a perimeter around our campsite. Dry leaves, measured footsteps, stop, then 3 or 4 more steps, stop again. I lay completely still in my sleeping bag, my heart so loud I was certain whatever was outside could hear it. Marcus was asleep. I didn't wake him. Part of me thought if I woke him, it would confirm that the sound was real. So I just lay there for 20 minutes, listening to something walk around us in the dark. And then it stopped. I didn't sleep again. Morning came gray and cold. I didn't mention the sounds to Marcus right away. We made coffee, ate, started breaking camp, and that's when I saw it. Around our campsite, not far from the perimeter of our firelight, the grass was bent, in a single, continuous loop. Something had walked a full circle around us in the night. The impression was clear in the dew-wet grass, and at one point in that circle, less than 10 feet from the entrance of our tent, the impression stopped and faced inward. 2 parallel depressions in the soil. Whoever it was had stood there facing our tent for long enough to leave marks. Marcus went very still when I showed him. "We should go," he said. But we didn't go. I don't know why. I think we both convinced ourselves it was a deer, a weird coincidence, something explainable that we just weren't smart enough to explain yet. So we stayed a second night. The second night is what I can't get out of my head. That afternoon, Marcus went to explore the creek bend while I stayed at camp. About 30 minutes after he left, I heard him calling my name. Not panicked, just loud, insistent. I found him maybe a quarter mile upstream, standing at the edge of a dense thicket of brush. He'd found a camp. Not a hiker's camp, a camp that had been lived in. There was a lean-to structure built from cut branches with a precision that suggested someone who'd done it many times. There were canned goods, some empty, some not. There were clothes folded on a flat stone. There was a rusted camp stove, fuel canisters, a tarp strung expertly between two trees. There was a rope line with strips of dried meat hanging from it, and there was a collection of items hanging from a low branch on a cord. A keychain, a single work glove, a child's sneaker, a broken watch, sunglasses with a cracked lens. I recognized one of the items, a small red carabiner with a compass on it, the exact same model Marcus had clipped to his pack when we left the trailhead. The same model. Except Marcus's was still on his pack. That wasn't the same one. I told myself that. It wasn't the same one. We did not touch anything. We packed everything in 11 minutes and started moving toward the trail. We were moving fast, not quite running, when Marcus grabbed my arm. He pulled me sideways behind a wide oak and pressed his back against it, and I didn't ask questions, I just did the same. 60 meters up the trail, standing perfectly still in the middle of the path. A man. He wasn't moving. He was just standing there, facing our direction. Average height, wearing a dark jacket. His face was, and this is the part that stays with me, completely in shadow even though it was mid-afternoon. The tree cover above him was thick, but it wasn't that thick. The light just didn't seem to reach him the way it should. He didn't call out, he didn't raise a hand, he just stood there. We stood against that tree for what felt like 4 minutes. My legs were shaking, Marcus's hand on my arm forearm tight. I had bruises for a week. Neither of us breathed loudly. And when I looked back, the man was gone. We ran. We ran without talking, without stopping, crashing through brush because the main trail felt exposed, and we came out through the state forest edge onto the county road, already reaching for the truck keys. We threw our gear in the bed without stacking it. Marcus's hands were shaking so badly he dropped the keys twice before getting the door open. We drove. Neither of us spoke for 20 minutes. We stopped at that same gas station diner. The same older man was inside, eating alone at the counter. He looked at us when we came through the door. He didn't look surprised. He looked like someone looking at people who just understood something they'd been warned about. I sat down across from him without being invited. I described what we'd found. The camp, the items, the footprints, the man on the trail. He was quiet for a long time. That land past the ridge used to belong to a family. Family's long gone. Son stayed. He's been out there somewhere between 15 and 20 years. People know he's there. He doesn't bother anyone much as long as they don't stay. I asked if he was dangerous. The man took a long sip of his coffee. He tracked a couple of hikers out of those woods in 2019, followed them all the way to the county road, stood at the tree line and watched them drive off. Never touched them, never said a word. He paused. But the collection he keeps, those things he takes, that started after a couple went missing back in '09. Hikers. They never found them. Nobody could prove anything. Nobody could prove anything at all. He looked down at his cup. That's why I told you to stay in the state forest, son. We filed a report with the county sheriff's office that evening. The deputy who took our statement wrote everything down, nodded at all the right moments, and then told us that without a direct threat or physical contact, there wasn't much they could do. He said they were aware of the individual. He said it the way you describe a pothole nobody's gotten around to fixing. They never went out to check, or if they did, they didn't tell us. I looked up the missing hikers from 2009. A couple from Ohio, early 30s, experienced backpackers, last seen at the county road trailhead. Their gear never found. The investigation went cold within 18 months. I don't know what happened to them. I don't know what would have happened to us if we'd stayed another night, or if we'd slept through both nights instead of just one. What I do know is this. That man had walked a perfect circle around our tent in the dark, stood 10 feet from where we slept, and watched.
and he'd done it quietly enough that only the weight of his feet in wet morning grass gave him away. He wasn't a ghost, he wasn't a monster. He was a man who had lived alone in those woods for 2 decades, who had learned the patience of something that doesn't need to rush. And somewhere in that thicket, on a cord hanging from a low branch, was a red carabiner just like Marcus's. I think about that a lot. I think about what the first version of it looked like, what trip it came from, and whether those people made it home. We did. I'm still not entirely sure why.